to another episode of our favorite topic, global culture, global leadership, and global languages. And our hope is to get you closer to a few cultures or some that you're not familiar with their ways, with what they deem accepted, with their value system, so on and so forth. And we hope that with the content that I share, I hope that you can develop the ability to absorb, the ability to reflect, the ability to appreciate, and the ability to share the information with others that are not aware of what we are discussing, and have that extraordinary effect on people around us, on humanity overall. We are trying to create, or I am trying to create, an environment of understanding, cooperation, peace, and acceptance, because really, if you think about it, we all one. We do the same thing. It's just different ways. And that different ways is what we are trying to understand. So let's start with a question, okay? Have you ever worked with a French national and you told him or told her, "Good morning"? Let's pick François. "Good morning, François." And his answer was, "Is it?" And I'm not making fun of anyone or anything. It's just what it is. I have worked with several French nationals, wonderful people. And I do speak French, so we get along just fine. And one thing I've noticed is when you ask question or when you're having a conversation with them, there's got to be a complaint. There's got to be something that makes you wonder, that makes you ask, okay, did he just say that? Did she just say that? But once you understand them, you know what is it about. How about a Dutch national? Have you noticed that they complain a lot? Why is that? Are they just grumpy, upset people? Or is it just a matter of perception and familiar ways? Why are they considered the number one complainers in the world? I worked with Dutch people, wonderful people, but you just have to understand why do they complain a lot. It's just because they look for better ways. There's a saying that, okay, if you can reach that height, you can reach higher. So we want the best from you. And that's why you may find them or have tendency to complain a lot. So different people do different things, and different people are known for different things. I know it can be stereotypes, but a lot of times what we know about a group of people, and when we are saying a group of people, we are just generalizing, and sometimes within that generalization that we use, we can make mistakes. So we have to be very careful with that. Now, let me ask you this and see how much do you know about world cultures. I will give you a description, okay? And tell me or think about it and answer the question, who might this person be? So if I tell you, okay, I'm going to give you traits, and then you figure it out. He is very much into green energy. He lives in isolation in his home, a place he best describes as his and cozy. However, he is not the most receptive of people when it comes to visitors. He is somewhat primitive, but he is honest, straightforward, and all he really wants is a life in life are the simple little pleasures, such as peace and quiet. Who might that be? What part of the world are they from? If somebody give you this description, will you be able to guess where they're from? Think about it. I'm not going to give you the answer now. I will share it with you at the end. But again, who might that one be? Today we are talking about, what are we talking about? We're talking about communication styles. Okay? Different cultural communication styles. Why is this important? Well, as the world becomes smaller and international, business and political agendas continue to grow in importance, it will become increasingly valuable to understand different cultures' communication styles. Communication is both verbal and non-verbal. You may have noticed, if you are dealing with Asian cultures, some of the African cultures, some of the Arabs cultures, some of the Middle Eastern cultures, you might have noticed that they depend heavily on nonverbal cues. Well, someone may ask me, well, how do you expect me to know all these cues? It's very simple. I give you a tip. I had shared before that I've been always a curious person, and this is the tip. Curiosity. Okay? Curiosity get you through a lot of things. You can ask any questions to anybody about anything, provided you do it with curiosity. Be just like a little kid. I mean, if you have children or have children in your family, you will agree with me that if you sit down with a 4-year-old child, you will receive about 390 questions per day. Be that person. Ask the questions for the cues on non-verbal. Okay? Now, when we talk about different cultural communication styles, we are going to mention, because this is, I find it quite important to understand, because at first, I mean, I've worked with over 122 nationalities, and everyone is different in the way they do business. They conduct business, the way they speak, the way they act. And I had to learn, and I had to understand that there's something called direct versus indirect communication style. Cultures that value getting to the point quickly without mincing words are direct communicators. Okay, in this type of interaction, the truth is highly valued, with a concern for people's feelings taking a backseat to the conveyance of information. Isn't this what the American culture is about? Some other cultures like in England, Australia, New Zealand, I mean, even in Nordic cultures, you will see that style. While indirect communicators value the idea of saving face and maintaining harmony. Let me say that again. They value the idea of saving face and maintaining harmony. I've seen this a lot in Asian cultures, also in Arab cultures. That includes North Africans and also Africans cultures. And when I mention Asia, there is a difference between North and South, East and West. But pretty much, if you find yourself not happy with a service, as an example, or having some disagreement with someone, and you are coming from a direct communication style culture, and you are about to confront those people, I will caution you to stop and rethink. Just because they are not used to confrontation, they are not used to criticism face to face. They're more of saving face and maintaining harmony, and let time heal things. That's how they think. Let time do its magic. And I was talking to a lady just a couple of days ago, and she was telling me about problems that they had in their family related to work. And she said, well, why don't you talk to this person and ask them to do this and that? And I said, why don't you do it? I mean, it will save time, it will save energy, and it will be direct without anyone getting involved in this. Isn't that a much better way to do things? And her answer was, no, well, I just can't. We don't do it. It's not our culture. So think about this when you're dealing with indirect communicators from different cultures. We know that here in our society, we're not silent. We express our feelings and we say what we think. But in other cultures, silence in a conversation is common and appreciated, really appreciated. Cultures that embrace indirect communication believe also, if you are in a setting and if you speak and if you're talking, they do believe that interrupting another person or another speaker should be avoided, and it's very rude. When if you go to Japan or you're dealing with someone from that part of the world, you have to really, really sit and wait until they're done with everything they have to say before you can ask a question, before you can interrupt. For us here, for example, if we go to, even in school, think about that in school. Don't you, when the teacher or professor is talking, don't you raise your hand and say, I have a question? Well, that's a no-no in some part of the world. You have to wait regardless. Write down your question, write down your thoughts, and wait until they finish before you can interrupt. And this is part of direct versus indirect communication style. We have to think also about, we got to factor in culture etiquettes, okay, in communication, such as personal space expectations is different, both in social setting and also business setting. While Northern Europeans and European Americans feel most comfortable at an arm's length away in a social interactions, Hispanics, as an example, would consider that distance unfriendly. So knowing what is expected is helpful. Eye contact as an example, or touch etiquette also vary dramatically in cultures, Asian cultures, for example. I've noticed Asian cultures, southeast or northeast, or anywhere you go in Asia, anywhere you go in the Arabian Peninsula or the Middle East or somewhere in Africa, you will not see people touching each other in public settings. It's just considered, I wouldn't say rude, but considered abnormal. It's not something they're accustomed to. Even a husband and wife, or they're walking down the street, you wouldn't see them holding hands. Nothing wrong with that. It's just the way society is. But I did mention before, I mean, everyone can be really different. And I did mention before that I was born and raised in Morocco. And I remember when I was living there, I remember people like two guys will be hugging each other. Two girls will be holding hands going down the street, and they're just friends. And it depends on a lot of touches, or they're accustomed to a lot of touching. But until recently, where I noticed that a couple, husband and wife, would hold their hand in public. In some cultures in Asia, it's also changing, but it all depends where you go. So, if you are planning to go to these countries or dealing with people, just be mindful of touching. Okay, eye contact. I've mentioned before that eye contact in some cultures is regarded as disrespectful. And I was talking to an attorney. He was an Egyptian attorney, and I'm telling you that for the entire meeting, it was like 25 meeting, he did not look at me in the eyes. He was always looking down. And I understood that and respected it, because I know in their culture that is a sign of respect, not a disrespect. Now, going back to the cultures, the Asian and the Hispanic, there's a lot of similarities. There's one significant difference between these two cultures, is the way touching in public is perceived. Okay? Hispanic are a high touch society. So before meeting with these cultures, it's best to learn about the etiquette just for consideration purposes. Now, when we talk about communication and the styles, we have to mention time orientation. A culture's perspective about time can make a big difference in how its people relate to other cultures. If you noticed, here in America or in anywhere in Europe, time seem to hold to the notion that, or they seem to hold to the notion that time is of the essence. I have noticed, and I can be wrong, but I have noticed even here in America, there's pockets of cultures that will still operate with the background behavior or norms or traditions. I would say I've noticed in African American, also Asian Americans, Native Americans, Arab Americans, and Hispanics also. They tend, not all of them, but a lot of time, they're late. And a lot of time, when I ask the question, is just they view time as a more fluid element with no control over them. Once we understand that, we will be okay. But for someone that has other things to do, if you're invited or you have an appointment, make sure you emphasize the time and the importance of meeting at that time. make sure you emphasize it, because the person, you may tell them 7 o'clock, they may show up until 7:30 or 8 o'clock. But just before you even do anything, or before you hang up, or before you finish your conversation with the person, if you are setting up an appointment, make sure time is something that you put emphasis on. It's from this time to that time. Let's talk about individualist and collectivist perspective. And this is also very important when we are communicating. Cultures are categorized as having either individualist or collectivist trait. And I have mentioned before that in individualist cultures like the US, individual achievements and rights are very important. You will hear I did, I achieved, I so often. And direct contrast, collectivist traits include putting the objectives of group first and operating more as we society. Where do we see this? Well, we see it pretty much in the entire world, except for certain countries such as the US, England, some European countries, and also Australia and New Zealand. But other than that, a lot of cultures operate based on the concept of we. I was talking to a lady yesterday. She was originally from India, very well respected doctor in our city. And as she was talking, she was always mentioning we, talking based on we. And that is something that we are starting to see in the American culture a lot when we are talking or promoting mindful leadership and promoting thoughtful leadership. And the concept of collectivism is something that we are seeing a lot in the workplace, and also in community work and organization, whether it's profit or non-profit. So be mindful of that. Now, let's talk about global business. Doing global business, how can we do better when we are doing business with other cultures? Communication, we have to understand this. Communication has to do with perception. And when I mention perception, it is this. It is very simple. Before we look at others, let's look at ourselves. People see what they want to see, not what you want them to see. And this is one of the challenges in cultures. And when I say cultures is a system of behavior that helps us act in an accepted or familiar ways. Okay? Norms. If you are invited to lunch business meeting, okay, and we are here accustomed to talking, right? We talk, we meet the person, and we order food, and then we talk, and we're talking throughout the meal. It is acceptable. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Well, if you go to other cultures, and I'll mention one in particular. If we go, let's say we go to Finland. You're meeting someone for lunch or dinner. You can talk, but it's preferred not to. If you do, I recommend small talks. Ask a simple question, listen to the answer, and pick up a word, follow up on that word. It's simple. Something to know about Nordic cultures is the economy of language, we may use a lot of words to say very little. In Nordic cultures, is minimum words, maximum message or meaning. So be mindful of that. Another thing, for example, that if we are talking about perception, if we're talking about accepted, familiar ways, let's ask you this. When you go, if you are here in the United States and you are flying from one state to another, or you're flying using American Air, any American airlines, not a particular one. What are we accustomed to? Well, we hop in, we sit, and we may. I haven't had a meal yet in any of the American airline. You're lucky if you get peanuts or pretzels or something. Well, for me, this is no service. It's called no service whatsoever. But we are accustomed to it. We accepted it, so we're fine with it. Let's say, for example, we can compare it to another airline that I know of, excellent airline, either the Qatar airline or Singapore. Let's pick Singapore. Singapore is one of the best airlines in the world. We know that. We know that if we are traveling with Singapore airline, and because they have a lot of hierarchy in their society, we know that we will be served. Meaning, as soon as you walk into that plane, you immediately notice this superior service with the body language. They bow. Anything I can do for you, madam. Anything I can do to make you happy or make you feel happy, enjoy your flight with us. Well, and you feel good. Oh, well, this is their culture. But imagine the same conduct is done here in America. You will get suspicious. This is not normal. Because it's something that is not familiar or hasn't been accepted. We accept it the other way and we never talk about it. It's just something that is accepted. We are all doing the same thing, but in different ways. And that's what I am going to conclude this episode with. And let me find out if you have the answer for my question. No? Maybe? If you figure it out, I give you a high five. And the question, well, I gave you traits of someone, and I asked you, what part of the world do you think he may be from? And with the traits that I gave you, that is someone from Nordic cultures, meaning Norway, Denmark, and Finland. Yes, it can be stereotype, but a lot of it is true. And as soon as you say green, lives in isolation, straightforward, enjoy little pleasures in life, such as peace and quiet, that is typical in Nordic culture. And by the way, if you are ever asked to go for a walk in the forest, and you are in one of those countries, welcome it with an open mind and open heart, because forest, symbol of green, is highly valued, highly appreciated, a highly loving gesture. Yes, if somebody asks us to go for a walk in the forest here in the United States, I would be very suspicious and I would reject. But in that society, it is an act of kindness, of hospitality, an act of love and appreciation. With that, have a wonderful rest of your day, and until next time, stay safe, stay well, stay connected, go out and talk to someone that is not from your culture or from your environment that you are usually accustomed to. You will not regret it. Take care. Bye-bye.